It's time for the moment you've been waiting for. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Tsh, da, 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 da. Di, da, di, di, da, di, di, da, 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 da. Di, da, di, li, da, di, li, di, da. Di, da, di, li, di, da, di, li, 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 da, di, di, da, di, di, da, di, di, da.
Right, Grandmaster Nightfalls, Destiny 2's endgame of the endgame content. People have been asking me, Ark, how do? So here we go. I'm making this video to go over some of the main team compositions, strategies, and loadouts that help me and my teams get to Conqueror. If you're already completing these activities, then you probably won't see anything new here. If you're new, however, I'd recommend getting your hands on all of the exotics mentioned in the video for the next time they become available. Armor from Lost Sectors and weapons, go watch Dao. So let's get the obvious out of the way first. GMs currently require you to be at like level 1325, although that will be changing when the next season arrives, to what I assume will be 1335 given that the cap has increased by 10 per season. They are stacked with modifiers. You've got Extinguish, Limited Revives, Extra Shields, Match Game, Mob, Chaff, and 2 Nightfall specific modifiers like Arachno and Sepic's Gaze. You also have 45 minutes before you lose all your revives, and anyone who goes down will stay down. First thing I would recommend for going into a GM Nightfall is making sure you are aware that it is not easy. Okay, while I can agree that there are definitely easier Nightfalls for Grandmaster, if you want Conqueror, you'll have to do the more difficult ones too. Take it slow. Every enemy is a danger. They are more accurate, better at predicting movement, have far more health and shields, and the last thing you want to do is go into one of these thinking you could just mindlessly take on any old Dreg because he will shove his shrapnel launcher directly up your team composition. Warlocks and Titans are good to have because of their super capabilities, but that is not to discredit Hunters. They play a different role when you need them. I split required supers into 2 categories, your offensive and defensive supers. Your defensive options are your Well and your Bubble/Shield Titans, and these are incredibly useful to have because they will stop you dying. Dying is bad. They also have incredibly high uptime if you use them correctly and with some exotic combos, but we'll talk about that later. My recommendation is you have 2 defensive supers and 1 offensive. That way your defensive supers can stay up as long as possible, charging off of each other, and your offensive can use those orbs to deal large burst damage that would otherwise be dealt by multiple teammates. These are some of the specific strategies we use when running our Nightfalls, but they all run around either having 1 defensive and 2 offensive, or 2 defensive and 1 offensive. We'll start with basic balance, so your standard Well Warlock, your Bubble Titan, and 1 offensive. Okay, this will be the best all-round approach, giving you the ability to hold the line anywhere with a Well, and the Bubble provides a great damage boost and a health regen spot when you get into trouble, or as a last resort if you need that clutch res. I recommend a Stasis Offensive Super for increased crowd control, or a Top Tree Voidwalker Hunter with Orpheus Rig if you need any more support potential with this build. Phoenix Protocol allows the Warlock to get well energy back consistently, and Helm of Saint 14 is good for stopping adds rushing you when you're in a tight spot. Next up we have the double Angry Bears. Middle Tree Void on Titans gives you Banner Shield, and when combined with the Ursa Furiosa, which allows you to fully regen your super immediately after use, provided you block enough damage. This is a very strong build. I ran this one with Chaos Reach Warlock to provide high damage output and add clear potential, with Geomags providing incredibly fast recharge rates. In practice, Titan 1 would pop his shield, providing cover and a damage boost counting down till his super ended. Titan 2 would wait for the call to pop his shield, doing so just before the first one goes down, so that no shots slip through the gap due to the animation timings. This works best in areas where there are a lot of high tier enemies and snipers that would out-damage a normal Well of Radiance's regen capability. The third one is crossing streams. Double Chaos Reach Warlock and one defensive super, usually a third Warlock running well with Phoenix Protocol for that increased uptime. Sounds crazy, but it works. If you need high burst damage or add clear potential and you just want more supers, then grab your Warlock buddies and try this one out. It's fun. Just remember you will benefit more if you use your Chaos Reach whilst inside the well to provide even more super energy from the Phoenix Protocol. This is especially good for boss burst damage, but be careful of snipers shooting you out of the air whilst in super. You'll notice that these strategies are more about managing your supers with your teammates, and you should make adjustments based on your team's strengths and preferences. You'll also notice that none of these are about dealing with champions. That is purely down to your loadouts. So let's talk loadouts. Your loadout should revolve around two things: shield types and champions. We'll start with shields. Unless you are running Divinity, I recommend that you use your energy slot for your primary weapons. That is your scouts, hand cannons, pulses, and all that stuff, because you want to be using this to break shields before using your high damage weapons. Shields recharge, ammo does not, and you have far more primary ammo to waste on shields than you do special, just as a general rule. Each fireteam member should be able to deal with two different shield types. That way if one person goes down, your teammates can still work around the shields in the strike. Some strikes will have all three energy types, so it's worth spending 5 to 10 minutes in orbit before you start, just getting your gear together and making sure you have them covered. Remember, you also have your subclass abilities for shields if you just need it for a few enemies. Champions. Oh boy. Champions. Across your team, you should have 2 different people able to deal with each kind of champion. Some strikes involve all 3. Assuming a strike has all 3, player 1 and 2 should have Overload, 2 and 3 have Barrier, and 3 and 1 have Unstoppable. This way, if any of the 3 Guardians fall, you should still have champion coverage from the remaining 2. Usually though, you would only have 2 types. This frees up your weapon slots for non-champion exotics or weaponry that you might otherwise want to use. You can even use your artifact mods to give yourself the ability to deal with all 3 types through your abilities, so look out for those because they will also free up slots for you to use for damage potential. As for killing the champions, let me put it this way. The best way to kill a champion is team coordination. Unstoppables, call out your target, stun them, focus fire with your team. Barriers, call out your target, stun them, focus fire with your team. Overload, call out your target, stun them, focus fire with your team. As long as you do that, your weapon choices do not matter a whole lot. There are, however, some good choices. In the exotic list, you start off with Anarchy. Stick it, let it do its thing, use another weapon to maximize your DPS. Izanagi's Burden. This gun will deal with most champions in 2 and a bit shots and is great for burst damage, especially coordinated burst damage. Divinity. Incredibly useful for coordinating your team and giving them an easier crit spot, especially when paired with that intrinsic overload. Makes life so much easier. Ariana's Vow. Intrinsic anti-barrier and high damage per shot with plenty of ammo, and a catalyst for auto-reloading holster, although the catalyst is a very, very arduous process to obtain. Xenophage, high damage, consistent, not a lot else to say about that one, besides it does not crit on its own. The Lament, incredibly high damage, but you risk dying from being point blank with your enemy, and the health regen does not prevent you from getting one shot. Sleeper Simulant, feels good, getting a buff next season, so it will be greater than it is even now. Bastion, only mention it on this list because it is getting intrinsic unstoppable next season, but we'll have to wait and see how useful that is compared to some of the other legendary options. On to legendaries then. Some good legendary options include whatever primary has a champion mod you require, and a reload and damage perk. No surprises there, but for burst damage there are some more specific choices. for your special weapons. We'll start off with the Connect slot. My recommendations are Succession, really strong with Reconstruction, and Vorpal. Heritage, also really strong with Reconstruction, but you'll also want Recombination in an ideal situation. Assault Mag is useful as well. Long Shadow with Appended Mag, Triple Tap, and a Backup Mag. Supremacy, Appended Mag, Triple Tap, and chuck a boss spec on any of these as well, just for that extra bit of damage. In your energy slot, Distant Tumulus, Tactical Mag, Clown Cartridge, and Firing Line on this one if you can find one. First in, last out, you want Assault Mag, Auto Loading, and Vorpal on there, again if you can find one. And then single shot grenade launchers with blind nades and auto loading have also been known to be useful. Your heavy slot. Any rocket launcher with impact casing. Tracking is helpful, Clown Cartridge is nice to have, and dare I say it, Lasting Impressions is not as bad as I make it out to be. Your options here are things like Tomorrow's Answer, Royal Entry, Code Duello, and Heretic and Sub-Zero are less good options if you need an Arc version. They roll with less good perk combinations, but there are still some decent ones out there. Falling Guillotine, it's still good with Relentless Strikes and Whirlwind Blade. There are some changes coming to it though, so look out for those. Commemoration with Reconstruction Rampage or Dragonfly. Linear Fusions are getting a buff, so Threaded Needle can roll with Liquid Coils, Clown Cartridge, and Vorpal if you want to have one on standby. It's also easier to farm this season because of the whole Battlegrounds scenario. My only recommendation for loadouts is always having a Divinity if there are Overload champions. Other than that, whatever combo suits your team will be just fine if you've taken into account everything I have said before. The only thing left to do is find teammates, and to make that easier, we have opened up the second Halcyon Space Clan. Make sure you upvote recruitment posts and even comment on them to tell everyone about how great your experience has been, or just how good looking the owner is. Hopefully this helps out. Hopefully there's a lot less questions about what to do and why. You know where to find me on the Discord if you still have trouble. Other than that, you know where to find me.